Hi, welcome to the first and last Unity tutorial recording for Min 394, Advanced 3D Game Development. So what I'm showing you now is how you can create a scene that leads to another scene or loads another scene with a simple splash screen. So the first thing we're going to do, and then we'll build it and then compile it and create a little web viewer out of it. First thing we're going to do, start a new scene. So I have created this brand new scene here, and I've got a couple elements in it. I have created well, I'll just start a whole new one. Now I'm going to save the scene just so I have it here. We'll save the scene as Scenes and Loader. This is kind of like your splash screen or your intro screen. Every game has to have an introduction screen and a main gameplay screen and then an end screen. So this allows you to preload some stuff before you go to your main game. Alright, so all we have in our scene is a simple camera. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to create kind of a fake GUI that makes it a little bit easier to scale with the windows. So I'm going to go ahead and change my projection of the camera to orthographic. And you can see it removes the parallax from the camera as well as makes sure that nothing is going to be viewed in perspective. So now what we need to do is create an item or element for our GUI. Now I'm not doing this with a literal GUI object, I'm doing this with a 3D quad which we're going to put up against the camera. So I create a game object. Here's my quad, and you can see it over here. And now, because my viewer is 16 by 9, I can scale this to 16 and 9. And let's just see. Now, because this is in orthographic and not parallel, let's put our position to 0. And let's select our camera. Let's change our... I guess that's not going to matter. It doesn't really matter where you are in the Z, but oh, there it is. That's what I want to change. Okay, what I want to do is center my quad over here. All right, I want to center it on my view, and if select my quad, and we'll just call this main splash. Okay, now I'm going to go to my scale. It looks like my camera scale is 960 by 600. Maybe that's not quite 16 by 9, and that's just the resolution I'm going out to. So perhaps I can just scale it up just a tad. I'm going to eyeball it because I'm being lazy, but really you should kind of have a specific goal in mind. You should have it be exactly the size of that camera resolution. 16 by 10 seems to work fine for me. Okay. So now we want to put a material on it. So I'm going to go to my material directory, create a material, and let's call this GUI underscore MAT. And now it needs to be a diffuse material. We could also make it vertex lit. Actually, that's too confusing. We'll just keep it at a standard diffuse. Now I'm going to select out of all of these different materials the background I have, and it's somewhere down here as my JPEG file. So let's bring this up. Alright, and now we just have to drag that onto our object. Now notice how dark it is. Well, we don't have a light in this scene, and our ambient light is still set to 0. Well, in this we don't really need to create a light. The less stuff we have in the scene, the better. So let's go ahead and go to Render Settings. I'm going to change my ambient light to 100%. That means that there's no shading going on in this scene whatsoever. So in essence, we're making a 2D screen out of a 3D scene here. Okay, so that is the first step. Here's our loader scene, and here's our splash screen. Now, we really want to make some buttons in order for the player to click on them, and I don't have these separated out, so we're just going to go with the play one here. I'll show you how I can do this. I've got a script here. And I'm going to check out my script. It's called ZGUI. And what this script essentially does is it generates a button, and if you press that button, something happens. Now we're going to get the code up and everything to load up our other main game scene. So here's my script here, this is ZGUI, and I've changed a couple things. Here I've got some variables. When we create a rectangle, we get a left, top, width, and height. I've got this button texture. It's a texture variable. It allows me to assign a texture to any of my GUI elements. And this var style, this is a GUI style. This is something that allows the user in Unity to change the style elements. So it's kind of like when you create an array and it just pops up a lot of user choices for this Unity inspector over here. And this stuff we actually don't need. Get rid of start. All we need is that onGUI, which is its own coroutine. So here we have the skin of the button equals style, and that variable is our GUI style. So whatever our GUI style we determine will pop into this style here of our skin of the button. This GUI layout button, this actually completely unnecessary. Let's just get rid of that. And now we have this statement. If GUI button, and this is where it is, button texture. Now what this means is, if this is pressed, then do this. And this is the important piece of code here. Application, load level. And now let's look and see where this happens. So I'm going to go to my build settings here. Okay, so here we have a couple scenes, and I've got one loaded already. We can remove both of these. And I guess it won't get rid of them for us, but that's fine. What I'm going to do here is in scenes, I'm going to click on loader. So as many scenes as you want in here, and I'm going to turn this fish load Unity, and we'll get rid of that one. We don't want to compile ones that are not used in the game, because then it's just wasted space and wasted data. Okay, now that we have these in here, right, now we can call up application load level, and these are considered our different levels. There it is. Bring that back. I guess it disappears when we put something on top of it. The window does. Alright, so all we do is say application load level, and whatever level it is by name. Right here, www.fish game underscore 01. Okay, so now that we have all those set up into our scenes in build, we can navigate in between those scenes upon any action or trigger or yield statement, whatever we want to do. We can set that up to access the next level. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is let's put a new object, and I like to compile all my GUI stuff on an independent object. So I'm going to create an empty object and call this game GUI. Alright, so now that I've created this blank object, I can select my script, which is my ZGUI, and just drop it on that. Okay, so now we have this button texture. Remember, this is the texture for our button? Alright, so unfortunately we don't get to see this button happening until we hit play, because this doesn't compile itself and run until we hit the play button. But I'm going to grab my play, and just to make this faster, I'm going to say btn. So here's this button, and basically that texture will just load that up on the screen. And here are my parameters for where that's going to happen. So let's just click on play, and you'll see this button will pop up here, and it looks just like this. I'm just going to place it over there by changing where it goes. Now if I wanted to spend a little bit more time, we could worry about making it match that exactly, but really what should happen is this splash screen should not have this on there. I should place that on it interactively because I'm creating a button out of it. And I'm not going to bother to rescale it. Okay, so now that we've changed these, remember when I switch off Unity, it's not going to keep these settings. So generally speaking, what I like to do is write them down. It's probably better to do this in some kind of note. But I usually just write them down here so I can see them. And I know that it's left, top, width, and height. That way I can just go back here when I hit play again and stop the game. Now I can remember what these were. 564, 440. 564, 440. 350 and 425. Okay, so now we know when I hit play, the button will pop up. And because we know the code here says application load level, and I've told it what level of load, I'm going to click on my button, and boom, here is the game that I have loaded up. It's running incredibly slow, and I'm not sure why. Probably because I'm recording this. Okay, so let's hit. Now when I stop the gameplay, it will go back to the scene that I was working on. Okay, so now we know how to load a different level. All you do is click on our application load level, tell it what level to load, which you've added in your scenes under your build settings. And now, one last thing, we're going to go to File, Build, and I usually go to Build Settings before I go to Build and Run, just so we can make sure this is all set up, and click on Build. I usually don't say Build and Run. I'm going to create a new folder here called Builds. And let's see, I'm going to call this WW Fish. And it's really a test. And sometimes it takes a little while to go through this compiling process. And you see where it's saying build scene 0. Skipped through that long, drawn-out process of compiling here, and what it spits out here is under build. I'll get a directory, and it says www.fish HTML and Unity. And this HTML page just basically loads that Unity 3D file in. So there's probably some code in here that loads it, and I haven't actually looked at the code itself. Anyone who's a lot better versed in HTML than myself can probably parse through it and see where it's loading it, because you'll probably want to throw this code in here somewhere, right? So it's saying load this. Oops, that would be ugly. All right. So basically, it's just saying, you know, it's using this plugin, etc. So if I double-click on my HTML file, what's going to happen is, very slowly, because I'm running this recording software, it's going to load up the Unity 3D file, which is going to load up the first scene that I built. So whatever scene I had open when I built it, that's the scene that's going to get compiled as the opening scene. I'm really hoping that's what happens, because I don't think I can recall whether it loads that up separately or whether it loads the 0 scene. Just popping back here, I had to pause it while I waited for it to load. One thing that I've learned is that you must have this scenes loader Unity above the game that you're playing. So whatever scene that you intend to load first will be highest in the hierarchy here. So you have this is scene 0, and this one we don't have active. So you must have this first when you click on build. Now I'm going to click the build again, and we'll just build it to replace the previous one. And we'll pause this for a minute while it builds. Back, and a couple things. I'm not sure why this is offset, but if I click on this, here's my game playing in the browser. It looks like my button, I probably forgot to save my values after I hit the pause. I forgot to save the particular scene. But if I click my play button here, we'll see that the game itself loads up in the web player. Once again, it tends to run really slow when I'm recording, so I'm really not going to get a whole lot happening here. Actually, no, sorry, it says Unity player has crashed. So anyway, I'm not going to try to debug why the Unity player crashed. It happens occasionally. Let's just click out of that here. Alright, so that's a pretty good overview of how to set up your scenes and load. One of the most important things here is to make sure that scenes loader Unity, that loader scene is first in this list. Whatever is first in this list is the first thing that's going to open when you start the game or when you load up that index page.